Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The sky bled gray as the road slithered into Junipers Asunder, just a whisper of a town lost in the woods, so quiet it didn't seem to breathe. Dina pressed her forehead to the passenger window, watching rain smear across the glass like the town was crying. This place looks like it hasn't been awake since the 1800s. Perfect, Darius muttered from the driver's seat. All we need now is a foggy cemetery and a local named Earl who wants to skin us alive. From the back seat, Jexley snorted. Bet your left kidney there's a diner that serves people meat. And I'll raise you a haunted motel where the bedbugs speak Latin, Finn added, stretching his legs across Jexley's lap. They'd been on the road for hours, caffeine crashing, phones out of signal range, somewhere between the broken welcome sign swinging on one hinge and the cracked statue of a weeping angel in the center of town. A heavy feeling settled over them, like the trees were watching, like something was waiting. They pulled into the Sapwood Inn, a one-story motel drowning in ivy and mildew. A dim red vacancy sign flickered half-heartedly in the drizzle. Inside the front office, the air reeked of rot and rosewater. The receptionist was already standing at the desk, pale, stiff, eyelids too wide. She didn't blink. She didn't move. "You folks here to stay?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but not warm, like a lullaby sung at a funeral. Jexley nudged Dina. This woman's definitely eaten a guest or two. Yeah, 2 rooms, Darius said, placing his card on the counter, just passing through. The woman's fingers glided over the keys like spider legs. Passing through is a kindness most don't get. Lucky. She handed them 2 keys on old, faded fobs labeled 3 and 4. Don't go out after dark. Things grow different here. Before anyone could respond, she turned and walked through a door behind the counter that wasn't there a second ago. They unpacked. The rooms were old but clean, mostly. A strange floral perfume clung to the curtains. From Dina and Darius's window, you could see the woods pressing in, trees so thick and twisted they looked like they were leaning in to listen. "I don't like it here," Dina whispered later, brushing her teeth. "Something feels off." "I know," Darius said, keeping his voice low. "That receptionist creeped me out. Did you notice her nails? They looked like bark." Meanwhile, Finn and Jexley wandered to the diner across the street. It was called The Holler. No music, no menus. Just 7 locals sitting in perfect stillness, their pale eyes never blinking, forks moving in sync. The waitress was already at their table when they looked up. "You folks should eat quick," she said, "before the trees get hungry." Finn blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" But she was already gone. Back at the motel, the 4 friends stood outside on the walkway, sharing snacks, trying to lighten the mood. Then they saw her, a pale woman, dangling, half hidden in the tree line just behind the motel, not moving, not swaying, just hanging there, face turned toward them, eyes wide open, and smiling. It rained harder that night. Not the gentle, rhythmic kind that lulls you to sleep, but a sideways, slamming storm that made the motel's roof groan like it wanted to give up and die. Thunder rolled like the sky was splitting open in slow motion. Lightning licked across the windows, flashing twisted shadows of the woods behind them. Inside room 3, Dina sat upright in bed, her legs tangled in motel sheets, listening. There it was again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Not on the door, not at the window, under the floor. She elbowed Darius, who was passed out on his stomach like a corpse. Hey, there's something under us. Darius grunted, eyes still shut. Is it my will to live? Shut up. She slid off the bed, crept to the floor, and pressed her ear against the aging carpet. Her breath hitched. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It wasn't an animal. The rhythm was too deliberate, like fingernails, or something pretending to have fingers. Darius, get up, she whispered. I swear to Freddy Krueger, something is crawling under the room. That did it. Darius sat up, sleep-wrecked hair sticking out like he'd been electrocuted. Okay, cool, great. This is how it starts. First, someone hears a noise. Then one of us says, let's split up. And boom, tree tentacle to the face. Tree tentacle? Dina said, giving him a look. I don't know. It's always a tree, Dina. Ask Evil Dead. Finn and Jexley were watching static on the motel TV. No channels worked, just white noise and that faint, pulsing hum beneath it. They weren't really watching anyway. Want to go back to the diner for pie? Finn asked, voice low. Jexley turned to him slowly. You want to walk outside, in the dark, while we're trapped in a creepy horror town filled with off-brand slender men? I'm craving sugar. You're craving death. She tossed a mini bag of M&Ms at him and then looked toward the window. The storm hadn't let up, and yet, just past the curtain, through the sheet of rain, she could see something. Someone, a figure, tiny, still, standing in the middle of the road facing their room. Finn? He followed her gaze. It was a child, pale, inhumanly still, drenched head to toe in the storm. Her long black hair hung down over her face like something out of The Ring, though her frame was stiff, unmoving. The girl slowly raised a hand and waved. Finn jumped back like he'd touched a stove. Nope. That's a demon child. That's a possessed demon child. She's not moving, Jexley whispered. She's just watching. Don't say that. That's how ghosts work. They watch, and then they enter your body through your mouth while you sleep. But when they blinked, she was gone. Just gone. No footsteps, no rustling, no nothing, like she'd sunk back into the pavement. Later that night, the four of them regrouped in room 3, all pale-faced and wide-eyed, voices overlapping as they explained what happened. There was something scratching under the floor. There was a freaky little girl waving. There was definitely not any pie. I swear the receptionist has bark under her skin. They stared at each other in tense silence. Outside, thunder cracked again like the sky was coughing. Then Finn tried to lighten the mood. I'm just saying, if this turns into Cabin in the Woods and they send in the merman, I'll be pissed. Honestly, Dina said, at this point, I'd rather the merman. Darius nodded solemnly. Same. At least it'd be wet and fast. They all laughed, a little too hard, a little too loud, because laughter kept the fear away. Barely. They tried to sleep, but sometime around midnight, Dina sat up again, cold sweat slicked to her neck. The air was too still. The power had cut out, and the silence was unnatural. No wind, no rain, no thunder, just quiet. And then, a knock at the door, 3 slow taps. Dina shook Darius awake. Across the wall, Finn and Jexley heard it too. They crept toward their windows at the same time and saw them, not 1, not 2, dozens of pale townspeople standing just outside the motel, barefoot, staring, silent, their necks slightly tilted, their arms hung too long, and their fingers looked like twisted twigs. Some had bark crawling up their throats. Some had moss in their hair. Some had no eyes. They didn't sleep, couldn't. After the silent standoff with the town's pale-eyed lawn gnomes, the group barricaded the doors, using motel chairs, backpacks, and a mini fridge that Darius insisted wasn't plugged in anyway. It wasn't until the first hint of sunrise lit the sky, thin and sickly through the heavy clouds, that the crowd outside disappeared. No footsteps, no retreating shadows, just gone. "I think I peed a little," Finn whispered, brushing sleep-deprived curls out of his face. "Only a little," Darius muttered. "Amateur." Jexley stood at the window, eyes narrowed. They were waiting, watching. They didn't want in. They wanted to be seen. "Or they wanted us to see them," Dina said, "which might be worse." The Holler Diner looked exactly the same in the daylight, which is to say wrong. The lights inside hummed too loud. The air smelled like burned cinnamon and damp carpet. The same 7 townsfolk from last night sat at the same tables, unmoving, chewing in synchronized rhythm like mannequins learning to be human. The group sat down at a booth near the back, close to the door, just in case they needed to run like hell. The waitress appeared without footsteps. "Morning, guests." Dina's voice cracked. "We'll take 4 coffees. Strong. Very strong." The waitress nodded slowly. "Coffee's free here. No charge for the passing." "Passing?" Jexley said. The waitress didn't answer, just walked away, slowly, stiffly, like her joints creaked beneath her skin. Finn stared at his reflection in the diner window. You ever get the feeling you're not looking at yourself, but something else is looking through you? Darius slapped a butter knife into his hand. "Okay, Freddy Philosopher, let's not go full Lovecraft before breakfast." The coffee arrived. Black, no cream, no sugar, and still somehow too sweet. No one drank it. Dina headed to the bathroom and instantly regretted it. The mirror over the sink was cracked in 7 jagged lines. The lights above flickered, and the air, it didn't smell like bleach or soap. It smelled like wet soil and rotting bark. She turned the faucet. Nothing came out, but behind her, in the mirror, a shape moved. Dina spun. A woman stood at the end of the narrow bathroom hall, just inside the janitor's closet door. Her skin was chalk white, and her long silver hair hung like vines over her shoulders. She wore a nightgown that clung like wet fabric, and her eyes, they were hollow, empty sockets, as if her eyeballs had rotted away. But she saw Dina anyway. Her mouth opened impossibly wide and whispered, "Don't let them burrow." Dina gasped and slammed backward into the sink, but the woman was gone. She ran out, heart hammering. "What happened?" Darius asked, standing up. "Bathroom ghost," Dina said. "Whispered something about burrowing. 0 stars. Do not recommend." Jexley went pale. "Like, into us?" "Yeah," Dina said, eyes haunted. "Like, we're the soil." Jexley was the first to notice. It was just after midnight. Everyone was tossing and turning in shared rooms, desperate for rest, dreading sleep. That's when Jexley felt the sheets tug, just slightly, like something was crawling beneath her. She screamed. They all bolted in, kicking open the door from room 3. She pointed at the mattress. "There's something inside it, under the bed. It touched me." Darius ripped off the blanket and flipped the mattress, bracing for a raccoon or a possum or a haunted squirrel. But instead, the box spring had a large split in the center, and growing up from inside it was a tangle of thin, fleshy roots. They writhed, pulsed, and worst of all, they were shaped like fingers. "Oh, hell no," Finn whispered. "We are not staying here tonight. I don't care if it's raining blood. We're leaving." But when they packed up and drove to the edge of town, the road curved sharply. and dropped them right back in front of the sapwood inn. They tried again, 5 times, left turn, right turn, floor it, GPS dead, compass spinning, every route, every escape, every desperate try ended right back where they started, and on the 5th attempt, the trees were closer, almost touching the road now, as if the forest itself had started to move in. They ducked into a small cafe near the center of town, the Hollow Brew. The barista didn't speak, no one did. The room was silent, except for the espresso machine wheezing like it was dying. Behind the counter, on the brick wall, was a mural, dark and strange. Trees with human faces, roots wrapped around pregnant women's bodies, a massive figure in the center, arms outstretched, covered in bark and bone. Underneath it read, "From flesh we bloom, from roots we are reborn." Dina leaned in close. "I think they're grown. The people here, they're not born, they're harvested." Jexley's hand shook as she pointed to a detail on the mural, tiny pods buried in dirt, inside them human-shaped fetuses. "Oh my God," she whispered, "that's what the woman meant. Don't let them burrow, they want to use us, like seeds." Darius stared at his hand. There was a scratch on his wrist he hadn't noticed before. Sap was leaking out of it. Not blood, sap. The rain had stopped, but it wasn't silent. The air buzzed, low, constant, almost like 1,000 insects whispering secrets just out of range. Trees creaked, leaves hissed in the still air, and the wind that had once moved like breath now held its breath. Back at the motel, Finn wiped sap from his wrist again. He hadn't told the others yet, but the scratch from earlier, it was spreading. Tiny cracks had begun to form along his veins, like roots burrowing beneath the skin. He told himself it was just stress, a rash, something stupid, harmless, right? Meanwhile, Jexley was sitting at the window, flashlight in one hand, a rusted crowbar in the other. "Okay," she muttered. "Just so we're clear, this is absolutely the part of the movie where people get picked off one by one." Darius, pacing, shot her a look. "Then we stick together, no splitting up, no weird rituals, and if someone starts levitating, we run." Dina was quieter than usual. She was staring out the window at the motel's garden, the one with the broken swing set and overgrown weeds. A small statue of a cherub stood crooked at the edge of the yard. Only now it wasn't a cherub, it had a face, a familiar one, Dina's own. Mouth agape, eyes hollow, made entirely of bark. She blinked, gasped, and it was gone. Just weeds, just vines, or maybe vines pretending. The first sign came with the blackout. All at once the lights died, phones bricked, clocks froze. The motel plunged into darkness so heavy it felt thick. Outside the window, movement, not people, trees. They shifted, branches cracking as if waking from sleep, roots tearing through soil like tendrils, inching toward the motel, slow, deliberate. Dina backed away. "Tell me that's wind." "That's not wind," Jexley whispered. "That's them." Suddenly, a root snapped through the wall. Drywall exploded, the floor buckled. Finn screamed, "Move!" Another root burst through the ceiling like a claw, writhing, grabbing at anything warm. The group scrambled out into the parking lot, lightning flashing overhead, and the woods were no longer just near the town. They were in it. Trees now stood between buildings, sprouting from sidewalks, crashing through windows. And they were still growing. They ran toward the coffee shop, but Darius tripped, caught in a net of writhing vines. A tree root wrapped around his ankle, pulling hard. Dina shrieked and dove after him, swinging a fallen motel sign like a baseball bat. She hacked the root in half. It bled sap like black tar, and Darius stumbled free. Holy hell, he gasped, covered in leaves and bruises. They're feeding. The shop was empty now, no barista, no music, just overturned chairs and a hatch in the floor behind the counter. Unlatched, open, they looked at each other. Nope, Finn said, already shaking his head. Hard pass. It might be where they're coming from, Dina said. Or where they're taking people, Jexley added. Darius gave a grim nod. Let's find out. They descended into darkness lit only by Jexley's flashlight. The air was thick, wet. Every wall was made of roots. The tunnel pulsed like a living lung. And then they saw them. Cocoons, human-sized sacks woven from bark and vine, hanging from the ceiling like twisted fruit. Inside each one, figures, some still, some twitching. One of them cracked open as they watched, splitting like an overripe seed. Inside was a pale, silent man, fully formed, covered in sap and smiling. His eyes opened, pitch black, and then he spoke in a voice that wasn't his. You will bloom too. The forest is hungry. Jexley smashed the cocoon with her crowbar. Dina lit a match. They burned it. Flames erupted down the tunnel walls, catching on the root webbing. Screams echoed, not human, something deeper, something older. The trees above screamed with them. The four of them burst from the hatch just as the floor cracked behind them, roots chasing like serpents. They didn't stop. They didn't speak. They ran through the rain-soaked street toward the diner. Anything, anywhere but there. Behind them, the coffee shop collapsed into itself, swallowed by the earth. But the trees didn't stop growing, and as they reached the edge of town, the road twisted again, back. Back toward the motel, back toward the forest, back toward the roots. They broke into the back of the diner. The holler was dark now. No lights, no voices, no 7 synchronized chew people. Just overturned chairs and wet moss growing up the counter like veins through the wood. Jexley slammed the door shut behind them, panting. Okay, I vote we set this town on fire and then salt the ashes. I second that, Darius breathed, leaning against the fridge. Anyone got napalm? Does shampoo count? Finn wheezed. Because I think my blood is turning into syrup. Everyone turned to look at him and froze. His shirt was damp with sweat, but worse, his skin had cracked. Fine splinters ran down the side of his neck like veins carved into bark. His left hand looked dry, like it had been soaked in bleach and left to rot, and from under one fingernail, golden sap dripped like honey. Dina stepped forward. Finn, why didn't you say anything? I thought it was just a scratch, he cried. I didn't want to freak everyone out. Well, too late for that, Jexley said, voice trembling. I'm me, okay, Finn said. I'm not one of them, I swear. I still hate clowns, I still think Freddy's scarier than Jason, and I still cry at the end of the never-ending story. Finn. I remember prom night. I remember when you puked in Jexley's glove compartment, Darius. I remember everything. They stared at him in silence. Then Dina took his hand, carefully. His palm was warm, too warm. She looked at Darius. He's not gone, not yet. Darius nodded. Then we keep him close. We fight for him. And if he changes? Jexley asked, voice tight. Dina met her gaze. Then we burn the forest down with him in our arms. They made their way back toward the motel to grab supplies, bandages, water, weapons. The place was worse now, overgrown, consumed. The Sapwood Inn was now half forest. Trees had burst through rooms 1 through 5. Roots pulsed through the parking lot like veins in flesh. A car nearby was wrapped in vines, its windows fogged from the inside. But room 3 was intact, sort of. The walls were crawling with moss, the floor was slick with sap, and on the bed sat the receptionist. She was waiting. Only now her disguise had peeled away. Half her face was bark, her teeth were too long, her arms bent wrong like vines tangled around bones. Her voice came in echoes like wind through trees. "You've tasted the sap," she whispered to Finn. "The forest sees you now." Finn stepped back. "I'm not one of you." She smiled, sap dripping from her lips. "You're becoming. You'll feel it soon. The silence in your mind, the hunger for soil, the ache to root." Dina lunged forward and slammed her crowbar across the woman's face. Crack! Her head twisted, wood splintered, and she let out a shriek that sounded like 1,000 trees screaming. The group ran. Behind them, the room exploded in vines. They found an old truck behind the diner, keys inside as if left for them. Darius drove. They made it past the town square, past the fallen statue of the weeping angel, past the "Welcome to Junipers Asunder" sign. For a moment, hope flickered, and then the road twisted. Again. Only this time, it didn't bring them back to the motel. It brought them into the woods, a long dirt path deeper than before. No lights, no stars, trees pressed in on both sides like walls closing in. The truck died. The silence was unbearable until Finn whispered, "They're here." From the woods, branches snapped, leaves rustled, shapes moved, slender, human-like, but wrong, limbs too long, eyes too pale, mouths split to the ears, tree people. Jexley gripped Dina's arm. "They're not walking, they're gliding." "Not them," Darius whispered, eyes wide. "The trees, look." The trees were shifting, roots crawling, trunks bending toward them like they were being summoned. And from the fog ahead, a massive silhouette moved, tall, bark-covered, antlers twisting from its head. A god of roots, the first one. Finn stumbled, his legs gave out, sap poured from his mouth. "No, no, no," Dina screamed, grabbing him. His eyes rolled back, and from his mouth a voice not his own echoed. "He is seeded, he will bloom." Roots burst from the ground, they wrapped around his legs, around hers. Darius and Jexley yanked them back, and they ran, dragging Finn into the dark. They ran until the truck was just a memory and the motel was a bad dream, buried in bark. The woods swallowed the road behind them, no trail, no exit, just the roots under their feet, pulsing like veins. Finn wasn't walking anymore. He was being carried, one arm slung over Darius, the other over Dina, his head rolling against Dina's shoulder. He mumbled nonsense, half words, strange whispers, sometimes in his voice, sometimes not, sometimes in the voice of the receptionist, or the waitress, or someone older, something deeper. The soil remembers, drink the dark. Let the forest wear your bones. "Shut up, Finn," Jexley hissed. "Don't let them in." "I'm not," he groaned. "They're in me." The woods cleared, just for a moment, and standing before them was a massive ancient stone ruin, overgrown with roots and crowned by a tree so wide its trunk could swallow a house. The tree temple. Twisted branches clawed the sky like black antlers, sap dripped from its bark like blood from open wounds, vines writhed across the stone like snakes, and at the base, an open doorway, no door, just darkness. "We don't have a choice," Darius whispered. They stepped inside. The walls of the temple were made of bone and bark, human bones bound in roots, some fresh, some fossilized, faces frozen in eternal scream. The floor pulsed beneath them, soft and slick, not like ground, more like flesh. At the center of the chamber, a massive pit, glowing with golden light from deep within. and above it, cocoons, dozens, hundreds, hung from branches that grew through the ceiling like veins bursting through skull. Inside everyone, people, some asleep, some wide-eyed. One looked just like the barista, another looked like Finn. Jexley turned pale. "We've been here before." "What?" Dina asked. Jexley's voice cracked. "Not us, but people like us. Travelers, couples, friends. They trap us, use us. We're just seeds to them." "Fetuses," Dina whispered, "for their trees." Finn opened his eyes, but they weren't his eyes anymore. Pale, empty, glowing with that awful amber light. He stood on his own, smiling. "Finn," Darius said gently, "don't do this, man." Finn stepped toward the pit. Vines unfurled around him like a crown. His hands cracked and split. Roots emerged from his palms like veins pulling outward. Dina ran at him. "No!" She grabbed him, slapped him, screamed his name. "You are not this. You are ours. You make awful jokes. You cry when you watch Stand By Me. You threw up in my hair in 8th grade. Finn's mouth twitched, his hands trembled, and for a split second, just 1 second, his voice broke through. "I remember." Then he screamed. The forest screamed with him. The vines snapped. Jexley lit the flare they'd stolen from the truck's glove box. She hurled it into the pit. Whoomph! Golden light erupted into red. Cocoons burst like blisters. The tree above roared, not groaned, roared. It burned. Roots shrieked, the floor cracked, and from the walls the tree people screamed as their womb collapsed. Behind the temple, through a wall of roots, an opening, a hidden trail, leading away from the fire, toward the highway, they ran, carrying Finn. The forest collapsed behind them, screaming, hissing, thrashing. They did not look back. Dawn broke as they reached the edge of the woods. Civilization, a gas station, a diner, a world that made sense again. But Finn, he didn't speak. His hands were bandaged, but beneath the gauze, the sap still pulsed. They didn't speak for a long time, just sat under the orange-pink haze of sunrise at a broken gas station, clothes soaked in sweat and sap, skin painted in bruises and dirt. Birds chirped somewhere far away, cheerful, clueless, normal, too normal. Finn sat slouched against a vending machine. His eyes were closed, breathing shallow but steady. He hadn't said a word since they pulled him from the tree temple. He still looked like Finn. But something was different. Something was missing. Or maybe something had been left behind. Dina paced in front of the station's payphone, trying to dial 911 for the third time. Nothing but static. Jexley leaned against the pump, arms crossed. "We're out, but I don't think we're out, you know?" Darius looked at the forest in the distance. The trees were still, silent, as if sleeping. He nodded. "They let us go." Jexley turned to him. "Why?" "Because one of us didn't leave. Not really." They found a car. Stolen, borrowed. No one asked. They drove for miles, out of the woods, through empty farmland, toward towns that didn't smell like wet soil and whispers. Dina sat in the back seat with Finn, watching him from the corner of her eye. He still hadn't spoken, just kept his hand pressed against the window. Outside, trees blurred by, but every now and then, one would look different, bent, knotted, pale, almost like a person frozen mid-scream, grown into the bark. They pulled into a roadside diner in the next county. Bright lights, shiny floors, people laughing, coffee steaming, normal, safe. Darius ordered waffles. Dina picked at toast. Jexley stared at the pie display like it was proof they'd survived. And Finn, he just sat, staring at the potted plant on the counter. A little sapling, vibrant, green, and pulsing. Later, back in the car, Dina opened the trunk to rearrange their bags. She froze. Tucked into the side compartment, wedged between a blanket and a flashlight, was something she hadn't seen before. A jar, an old mason jar, filled with sap, and floating inside, a tiny seedling. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Dina whispered, "They didn't let us go." She turned to Darius, her voice breaking. "They planted us." Inside the car, Finn smiled softly, not at anyone. Just at the trees,